Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. Jonah obeyed and the word of the Lord, and he went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may yet relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. And when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. What a amazing story of God's forgiveness, God's providence, and how people repented. But today the Nineveh Plain, the Middle East region, tells a much different story of Christianity, and one riddled with loss and despair. A century ago, 20% of Middle East people were Christians, and today that figure is below 5%. Before the 2003 invasion by the United States Armed Forces in response to 9/11, there were, as Representative Eshoo said, 1.2 million Christians in Iraq and the Nineveh Plain. Today, the number is less than 250,000, an 80% drop in just 2 decades. ISIS targeted Christians, destroying their homes, killing their men, kidnapping their women and children. And since ISIS's so-called defeat, there has been enormous hesitation for the Chaldean Catholics and others to return to their homeland in the Nineveh Plain, as many of their buildings and homes were destroyed. And there's also an ongoing fear of the next wave of extremism, an overall sense of vulnerability. And elsewhere in the Middle East, Christians are facing similar threats. In Syria, the persecution from ISIS left its Christian population displaced. And while President Bashar al-Assad continues to reclaim territory back from the war with the jihadists in places like Tel Tal, a once booming population of 10,000 Christians now amounts to 900 people. The radical Islamic ideology has inspired numerous splinter groups, such as Islamic State West Africa Province, a deadly group that enslaves women and girls as an intricate part of their strategy, and Al-Shabaab, or the youth, based in Somalia, aimed at enforcing Sharia law, banning all humanitarian assistance, ridding any and all Christians, ultimately displaced 800,000 from their homes. So what can we do as a free and independent people here in this country, as people of faith, to help our hurting brothers and sisters? I wanted to summarize just some of the things. Representative Eshoo talked about them. But just as a reminder, in '98, Congress passed the International Religious Freedom Act, which created the Commission on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. And they helped to pursue religious freedom for people around the globe. Then with the Frank Wolf International Religious Freedom Act, that gives the President, the State Department more tools and authority to punish non-state actors that violate religious rights. The State Department has an Office of International Religious Freedom. They write the annual report that Mr. Adderholt just talked about. And tomorrow through July 18th, Secretary of State Pompeo, as you know, is convening the second ministerial to advance religious freedom. And according to Secretary Pompeo, religious freedom is the top foreign policy priority of this administration, and I'm thankful for that. USAID set up the Genocide Recovery and Persecution Response Program specifically to help Iraqi Christians. And the total U.S. funding at this point is nearly $300 million since last year, with this money going to